have to say one of the great things about Culturati is that you're always kind of at the leading edge of where the world is at, and being exposed to that forces you to reconsider what you're doing, or at least what I'm doing in light of that context. And I think today, this time around, it's really been about what is the human/leadership relationship to AI going to be. I think that if I think about my work, so I've been developing leaders for 20 years now, and I think about what is it I'm actually doing, and the conclusion I came to is like, I think I'm helping these people evolve to the next stage of whoever they are as human beings, and that inevitably means that where they start and where they end up, at least for the moment, where they end up here is a bigger, better, kinder, smarter, wiser, calmer version of themselves, and that allows them to exert that influence on the people around them. So one way I think about how human beings encounter challenge, how human beings encounter challenge is usually in one of three ways. That something I call the red zone, the green zone, and the black zone. So the red zone is when you're shifting on high, you move into a state of protection or a state of attack or defense, or a state of wanting to get out of the room. And that's really good if somebody's attacking you and you need to defend yourself, or the building is on fire and you need to get out, but not so good if you're in the middle of the phone call with your most important client, somebody says something inflammatory and everybody goes into the red zone and it all collapses, right? So, or the bigger picture is, what if you're constantly living in the red zone? And I think way too many companies manage by putting people in a stressed out state over a long period of time, which then burns them out, right? So if we're taking seriously the idea that people are our best resource, we burn up our resources on a regular basis. So that's the red zone. It's like shifting into high. Then there's the black zone where you're downshifting into low. And if the red zone is too much energy and it's 2 o'clock in the morning and I can't sleep, the black zone is not enough energy and I don't want to get out of bed, right? And that's the place of disconnection, depression, withdrawal, autoimmune disease, all that sort of thing. And so, and again, it's a legitimate part of being human. If somebody close to you dies, you move into a black zone state of mourning as a way of adjusting to that. But as a way of life, neither of these extremes is ultimately sustainable or desirable. And it's very expensive at the end. So in the middle, you have the green zone, which is like the sweet spot, right? It's where we all want to be. It's where we're at our best. It's where we learn and adapt and collaborate and create and innovate, and we have a sense of humor, and you can see other people's point of view, and you're flexible and adaptive and all of that. The AI conversation has made it really clear to me that our leadership imperative now is to help leaders and then their teams and everyone else they interface with be in their green zone, right? And we need a human being that is the best of being human, not a human being that is in states of chronic survival or shutdown. Like, that's not helpful for anybody. And so I think what I realize is, the AI is forcing us to evolve and forcing us to be more this kind of vital, flourishing creature that we have the capacity to be. And that the 20th century and early 21st century models of management and leadership have really been ultimately destructive to I think, people's welfare and well-being. And so we can't keep managing by fear and stress anymore, right? We have to engineer our systems so that people can be at their physiological best in order to relate to and interface with these digital partners that have suddenly kind of emerged on the scene. And And in that place where you are your wiser, smarter, kinder, more generous self, you also get the resources to be able to meet the enormous challenges I think we're facing as a civilization. So you can't innovate your way out of a problem from a state of fear or terror, right? I think isn't that just obvious, right? So I think of one of my students who is an endangered species biologist. Her name is Heather Dyer. And when I met her, she had been struggling, and she didn't look great. She had put on a lot of weight. She was dealing with the effects of having a traumatic birth, adjusting to being a new parent, working full-time. She was a full-time executive student, and she's taking care of grandma who has who's kind of fading away into Alzheimer's, and she's trying to save the world. And she studies fish, and a particular species that she was studying was, on the endangered list, and the light bulb went off when she realized, the way she was living her life physiologically was in no way different than this endangered species she's trying to save, right? And that was the moment. She realized, the fish are in their red zone, I'm in my red zone, I'm nosediving towards black, I gotta figure out how to restructure my life so that I'm in the green zone. Not just some of the time, but all the time. And she worked through all the things that were going on inside her, all the assumptions and beliefs. I can't ask people for help, I have to do everything myself, that were causing her to chronically be kind of in this red zone place. And she evolved into understanding, she told me, as a biologist, I know all life is interconnected and interdependent, but I don't live that way. And I don't lead that way. And I realized that in order for me to be an effective leader, I have to be in my green zone. And to be into my green zone, that means I need to create a support system for myself, which she did. And she had a complete turnaround as a human being. And she lost the weight. She became, quite frankly, beautifully radiant. And it made me realize what happens to a human being when you move from a state of being in a chronic survival mode to actually thriving, is that we become beautiful. And not just skin deep beauty, but really this kind of inner radiant vitality that I have seen over and over and over and over again happen to the people that I work with, because we're helping them learn the skills to manage their energy better and how to create systems in their life to help them stay in their green zone more. And then they help their stakeholders stay in their green zone. And in Heather's words, she says, I see myself as an island of calm and clarity and connection, and I am trying to make this island bigger with everybody I meet and everybody I come into contact with. And the practical result of that is that she has innovated completely new ways of financing 21st century water infrastructure at the agency she works at. She's architected plans to account for native species habitat while also helping human communities get their water. And after her big shift, she decided she needed to lead this organization. And then she instituted all of these changes that really had dramatic effect on not just the natural world, but millions of people's water supply, frankly, right? So that was a very clear and beautiful case of how a vital leader vitalizes, the world around them, and that is the person I think we need to create more of as we march boldly into the 21st century with all the challenges that we are facing. That it's not just an issue of having more computational power, which is what the AI I think affords us, but to live in a way that vitalizes and energizes the people around you so that we can effectively face the challenges that are staring us in the face. And I think one of my touchstones is a quote from Joseph Campbell that is that vital people vitalize. Vital people vitalize. And I have been thinking about that for 30 years. And applied to leadership, vital leaders vitalize those around them, and when they do, they unleash a powerful, world-changing energy. And I have watched that happen over and over again. So what does a vital leader do? Human beings respond to challenge in one of three ways. They respond to it as a threat. They see it, they get defensive, or they get aggressive, or they try to get out of the room. I call it the red zone. Then there's the black zone, where they shut down or downshift. It's a kind of place of depression or disconnection and not enough energy. And then there's the place in the middle, the sweet spot, the green zone. So, which is where you are at your best. It's you are connected, you are engaged, you are adaptive, you're alive. And I think the leadership imperative is to not manage from the red zone or black zone anymore, but rather, how do you, as the leader, get into your green zone and stay there? And then how do you help your teams be in their green zone, so you help your stakeholders be in their green zone? And then that you're trying to make that island of calm and connection bigger and bigger and bigger. And what I've seen is that the energy that gets unleashed in all of that produces nonlinear breakthroughs in what's possible for us, even institutionally. So I think that's the mission, right? And what we have to do, it's interesting, like we save ourselves by learning how to live in the place where we are actually at our best, right? That's the good news at some level, is that you save yourself and you save other people around you by living in that place physiologically where you're at your best. And that you create an infectious energy, and I've had the pleasure of witnessing that over and over and over again. And I'm sure we've also witnessed the opposite, right? Like the destructive, toxic leader that just sucks the life out of everything or creates chaos wherever they're at. It is also important to know that the opposite is possible, right? And the good news is that it involves helping you be at your best, And so that doesn't sound too hard, does it? But I think that's really the key to thriving in the future. So how I got into this work. I'll be 52 this year. So 32 years ago, I was finishing up my second year of college and went to a health fair, and then watched the nurse's eyebrows go up really fast when she was checking my blood pressure. And I thought, wow, when the nurse's eyebrows go up really fast when she's checking your blood pressure, that can't be good news. And it wasn't. It wasn't. I was very shortly after that diagnosed with an autoimmune disease that was attacking my kidneys, and told that I had a 90% chance of dying within 5 years. So, I don't know where this part of me came from, but I thought 90% is good news, and somebody's got to be in the 10% who lives, and I decided that was going to be me. And I had this sense that, this kind of naive notion that if somehow I could transform my mind, and I saw it as a spiritual challenge, that if I could transform my mind, that a miracle would happen and I would keep on living. And I'm half Japanese. My great-grandfather was a sumo wrestler. And so I lived between these two cultures, and my professor gave me this book, The Three Pillars of Zen by Philip Kapleau, which was the first book to teach Westerners how to do Zen. which, in Japan, Zen didn't come from California. Zen was the warrior's practice. And I needed to be a warrior, frankly. And so I did what this book told me to do. And it gave me something to do with my mind, right? It gave me something, like I'm 20 years old, I'm trying to make my way in the world, and I'm dying, and it gave me something to do with my mind, right? That I didn't get swallowed into anger, depression, rage, which I did occasionally, but I could get myself out, right? So a miracle did happen. I ended up living another 17 years after that, actually. And along the way, I realized that, the world isn't getting easier, right? And that everybody needs to know how to do this. Everybody needs to learn how to manage their mind, and that we don't teach you how to do that in any way. And in fact, we will actively deride it as like the soft skills or whatever, or woo-woo or whatever, when in fact you are learning probably the most important skill you can learn, right? And I think that the pandemic probably served up on a silver platter the ideal condition that forces you to realize if you can't manage your mind, you can't manage anything, right? Because you're going to be locked in your house for the next 6 months or whatnot. And so I think that, learning how to manage the stuff that happens inside you is really the fundamental leadership skill. And then you translate that into external action, right? And that part of my work is helping people see that when you are acting from a state of anger, frustration, impatience, sadness or depression, you are not making the best choices available to you, right? And so how is your state of mind influencing what you perceive as options? And then how do those options turn into choices? And how do those choices turn into actions? And how do those actions turn into results? And are those the results you wanted? And so kind of the heart of my work is looking at, well, what are the results you are getting that you don't want? And like, what are the mental and emotional and bodily states that are creating that for you? And that most of us don't ever realize that, right? Mindlessness is the default condition of human beings. And nobody ever tells us that. In fact, they'll tell you the exact opposite, that you're conscious and rational, which we're not at all in any way. And it's like this fundamental human reality that we are on autopilot most of the time, and that we're defaulting to survival reactions, and that you can train your mind to do something different. And I had to learn how to train my mind to do something different, just to live, right? And now I think for us all to live, as we move through the 21st century, we have to learn how to retrain our mind, and that we can't give ourselves the luxury of defaulting to our inherent survival reactions, that we have to learn how to move beyond our fear and move beyond anger or move beyond frustration to a higher level of functioning, a higher level of being, right? Which, strangely, is a lot easier than those things, than living from anger or frustration. But I really do see that as the fundamental skill that we need going forward, because the AI can't do that for you. And that when you do those things, amazing, wondrous, magical things happen as a result. And if my own life is testament to that, amazing, wonderful, magical things have happened. I think because I have learned how to manage my mind at least a little bit better than I used to. And when you're the head of an organization and you have a mind that is that will default to calm or default to humor or laughter, or it defaults to curiosity, then you get a much different sort of place than I think what we've frankly settled for in terms of what the average organization is like. So I have watched myself turn into an optimist over the course of my life, strangely enough. So if I can do it, I think anybody can do it.